All right, good morning. My name is Sarah. I'm a member of the True Up Peer Network, and True Up is all about elevating the voices of youth and young adults with lived experience in foster care and working together to improve systems that every young adult individual has the opportunity to thrive. Today's conversation is focused on education and outcomes for youth and foster care, something that impacts so many of us directly and indirectly. Education is more than just a grade or graduation rates. It's about stability, opportunity, and having the support to reach your goals, no matter your starting point. For many young people in foster care, the journey through school is anything but simple. Disruptions, learning gaps, and the need to navigate a multitude of systems create notable barriers. That's why today matters. This is a multi-systemic issue. We aren't looking to place blame, but what we are looking for is to identify solutions to better support foster youth across the state. This webinar is a chance to understand the data better, hear what really is happening, and most importantly, think about what we can do all together to create better outcomes for our young individuals in care. Before we jump into the data, I'm going to pass it over to Leanne Magree with Etna Sky, who has supported this work to offer a few opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. I am incredibly excited to participate in this conversation. I'm the executive director for the Supporting Kentucky Youth, the SKY program within Aetna Better Health. It is the program that covers all of the health care for children who are in foster care, children involved in the justice system, children who've been adopted out of foster care, and our former foster youth. The work that Aetna and Kentucky Youth Advocates, along with the work that True Up is doing, is just vital in taking care of and supporting and advocating for the youth in Kentucky. This program, this data that we are about to take a look at, is going to help us understand how we can further advocate and put in place the programs and the supports that are necessary for our youth who are in foster care or who have been in foster care. For those of you who are in the system of care and participate and work every day in the system of care, you know that these kids that are part of this system are struggling every day in order to have some of the very basic needs that they need in order to take care of growing and developing. We all know that our children, as they age out of foster care, are typically the most challenged, especially when they have moved around often and have not been able to achieve their educational goals or the stability of being able to achieve their educational goals. So as we dive into this data today, please be thinking about how does this apply to your day in and day out work, and how can you continue to advocate for the needs of these kids and advocate for the changes the system of care needs in order to better support these kids and within this process. So I'm so excited that you all are here, and I look forward to hearing about this information as well as figuring out together how we can go forward and make this system better.
Thank you for being present and all of those thoughtful insights. Now let's dive into the data with Karina.
Hello, hello, and good morning. My name is Corinna Cash, and I am the Data and Research Director here at Kentucky Youth Advocates. I am so excited to be here with y'all this morning to celebrate the launch of our brand new True Up Interactive report on education outcomes for Kentucky's foster youth. For the next couple of minutes, I am going to walk us through how to access the report, the data, and some of the interactivity you'll find throughout the report. The goal of this report is really to explore the academic outcomes of foster youth, some of the factors that contribute to those outcomes, highlight some of the programs that really support our youth in getting to where they need to be, and finally, offering policy solutions to ensure that all of our youth have what they need to reach their full potential, no matter where they are in the state. Before I start, I do want to give a huge thank you and shout out to our incredible data partners that made this report possible, including the Kentucky Center for Statistics, Department for Community-Based Services, and Kentucky Department of Education. So with that, let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen. Give it a second to load. Beautiful. So we want to make sure everyone knows how to access the report. So I'm going to start on our homepage and take us from there. So as you see, this is our TrueUp homepage, and up here we have this button called Learn. If you click that button, you will be taken directly to the report. So at the top of this page, you'll see these three other buttons. If you click on these buttons, they will take you to any section of the report that you want to see. So for example, we're about to transition to talking about the data. So I'm going to click this Explore the Data button, and bam, we're there. So this report is broken up into a couple of different sections, such as attendance, education outcomes, graduation and career readiness, and finally, tuition waiver utilization. We start with attendance data because students can't learn and get the education they need to thrive if they're not actually in school. This section features two main data points, chronic absenteeism and homelessness. So as we can see on this graph right here, approximately 1 in 3 students in foster care are chronically absent from school, which is higher than that general K through 12 population. There are a lot of factors as to why youth are more likely to be chronically absent, including disruptions in placement, gaps in enrollment, and just missing days because of things like mental health. We also see in this section that youth in foster care are 3 times more likely to have experienced homelessness than their peers, most likely before or after they were in the foster care system. We included this data because we know that unstable housing and frequent moving can make it significantly harder for youth to both get to and thrive in school. One thing I will note about this homelessness data is that it is based off the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness, which is more all-encompassing than just street homeless, including arrangements like sleeping on a friend's couch or doubling up with family members. So moving on to the next section, this is where we really explore education outcomes utilizing school assessment data. And we break up this school assessment data in a couple of different ways, including by grade, by subject area, and then finally by DCBS service region. So to start, we have a graph here that looks at students who are rated as at least proficient in a subject area broken down by grade level and subject. And the way we determine if they were proficient and distinguished is based off of the state assessment testing that KDE does. Included in this graph are all 5 core subjects that students learn in school, including math, science, writing, reading, and social studies. So to explore these different subjects, as you'll see, you'll just click on this drop-down box and they'll have them pop up, or you can click on these arrows to go through each. As I click through each of these subjects, you can see that youth in foster care fall behind their peers in every subject, and these gaps grow as children move on to the next grade levels, often driven by the instability and trauma that can lead students to enter foster care in the first place and ultimately can cause disruptions in learning. If we scroll down, we can explore this data a little bit more in depth. We know that Kentucky is not a monolith, and we wanted to give folks the option to see how youth within their region or as close to where they are performing. We also wanted to give the opportunity for regions to compare to each other and learn from each other. There's a lot of great innovative programming and work happening across the state. So if you're in a region that might have slightly worse outcomes, that could be an opportunity to reach out to a region with better outcomes and see what's in place there and are there opportunities to replicate that for your students. So on these maps, we can specifically see 8th graders proficient or distinguished in reading and 8th graders proficient and distinguished in writing by DCBS region. Once again, on this graph, you can click on this arrow right here and toggle between students in foster care and students not in foster care. Before I go talk about this data a little bit more, I will note that unfortunately not all DCBS regions have data available. We care very deeply about protecting the privacy of youth, and because of that, we suppress numbers when there are low numbers of students in that area. Second, if you don't know your DCBS service region, that is okay. At the bottom here, you will find this little question mark, and on it, there's a link that will take you to a map that shows what county is in each DCBS service region so you can identify where you're at. You'll find this question mark at the bottom of every single map that has DCBS regional data. So, on to the data. I will first look at the two river regions because I'll be in Owensboro this long weekend. So, if we hover over this region, we can see that a little less than 1 in 3 students in foster care, in 8th grade in foster care, are proficient or distinguished in reading in the Two Rivers regions. If we compare that to regions around it, we can see it's 27.5% in the Salt River region or 10.6% in Jefferson. Once again, to me, this is a big opportunity if I'm in Jefferson to look at the regions around me and see, are there programs or supports that could be replicated within my region that can help support students in meeting that proficiency in reading at middle school. Now, we can also compare this to students not in foster care to see where gaps are between students. And we see in the Two River regions that 43.7% of students are at least proficient in reading. So there's room for improvement there, given that disparity. Moving to our next section, we explore graduation, college, and career readiness. We know that getting a high school diploma is a huge accomplishment, but we also know there are skills and opportunities that Kentucky schools offer that can set youth up for success in their next chapter of life. So for this first graph, we explore college and technical education enrollment and completion. And we have this broken down by DCBS region. And then for our statewide Kentucky data, I will note that that is only students in A1 schools. A1 schools are those traditional education settings that you think of. And you don't have to remember that because once again, we have this question mark at the bottom that defines what an A1 school is. So if you forget, it's right there. So whenever we look at college and technical education, this is also known as pathways, and these are opportunities in Kentucky public schools for students to explore careers as well as get experiences and skills needed to thrive within their future careers. So as we see here, whenever we look at enrollment within these college or career and technical education opportunities, we see pretty similar enrollment between youth in foster care and youth not in foster care. In fact, we see slightly higher enrollment for youth in foster care, but we see disparities here in completion of that program. Moving on to some of our regional data. So looking at regional data, we have regional data for enrollment for every region. However, we do not have it for the completion rate, just to note that. So as you see here in Northeastern, we see pretty similar rates to foster care and non-foster care students enrolling in that college and technical education program. And then if we move here to Northern Bluegrass, we see a little bit more disparities in enrollment within those CTE programs, but we see really similar rates of students completing them, which shows that that shows that students in those programs are being supported to complete it. Second graph, we look at post-secondary readiness. As we see here, students in foster care are more than 30% less likely to experience post-secondary readiness compared to their peers. However, I see something promising that rates do seem to be improving over the last couple years, and we're seeing more and more of our youth in foster care graduating post-secondary ready. Finally, as we see here, we have the average junior year ACT score. Every student in Kentucky public high schools take the ACT their junior year, and this is the average of scores across the entire state. As we see, we have some pretty persistent disparities between students in foster care compared to all students overall. So moving to our final section, this is where we really look at utilization of that tuition waiver for foster and adopted children, which allows youth who aged out of care or were adopted to attend Kentucky community and public universities for free and without having to pay those mandatory fees. So for our first graph here, we look at enrollment at in-state colleges 1 year post-graduation. So this is looking at students who graduated and then the following school year are enrolled at an in-state college only. So for our Kentucky data, we wanted to break that up a couple of different ways because we know that students in foster care can be in different education settings. So once again, at that A1 school, that's your traditional public school. Whenever you think of a public school, you think of an A1 school. A5 schools are those alternative education programs that a lot of districts operate. And then finally, all other school types encompasses all of the rest of the school types, including those A6 programs that exclusively serve state agency children, including youth within foster care. So if you're looking for data on A6, this is as close as we could get while also maintaining the privacy of students within those A6 programs. Once again, you don't have to remember those different school types. We have this question mark at the bottom that does define what each one is, and it's also in the data and definition section at the bottom of this report. Similarly, we wanted to allow folks to compare across regions. And I really like the comparison on this graph of students in foster care versus not foster care at the regional level because it allows us to look at not only what are the disparity or are there disparities in students in foster care attending college, but also allows you to compare it to generally what are youth in that region looking like. So you can see, are those actually disparities there or is that the trend of the region itself? So as we see here, approximately 1 in 3 students in Northeastern, or 3 in 10, apologies, attend an in-state college in foster care compared to 5 in 10. But if we go to Salt River Trail here, we can see that they're pretty on par when we look at students in foster care versus students in non-foster care. So once again, another opportunity to really look at, are there things that Salt River Trail are doing that are encouraging students to attend college? Are there programs and support in place that we can really replicate across the state? Next, we have first year college GPA. Once again, this is just for students who are attending an in-state college. And as we can see, there's pretty significant disparities in that first year college GPA of students in foster care compared to all students, which signals the need for more support for our youth in foster care as they attend college and move on to that next step. For our final graph, this is one I'm really excited to talk about because it really shows that we've made a lot of progress. So as we see here, this is enrollment in a public Kentucky or KCTCS University college, specifically using that tuition waiver for foster youth and educated or adopted youth. As we see here, from 2018 to 19, we had approximately 826 youth utilizing that waiver. And we've almost doubled that in the most recent school year. So that's huge progress and really speaks to work to encourage youth to utilize that tuition waiver and the supports available to them. If we look here, this is our graduation rate from KCTCS colleges. So this is youth who started school within the school year identified on the graph and graduated within 3 years. And as we see here at KCTCS, graduation rates have consistently gone up from 7.8% in the 2013-14 school year to 38.9%. That's a huge increase and really speaks to the work happening there to support students in the KCTCS system. However, we don't see that same continuous progress when we look at the 6-year public university graduation rate. It's gone up a little bit over the years, but has remained pretty consistent on that up and down. The final things I'll talk about on this report, and I think we'll get a lot more into this on the panel, so I'll move quickly through them, which is we also wanted to highlight innovative programs that really support students as they achieve higher education and move on to the next phase of their life. So here we feature several, including links where you can learn more about what those programs are. Finally, we wanted to also have policy solutions that could help better support our youth in foster care and ensure that they get the services and resources they need to really thrive and to address any disparities in education outcomes. So, like I said, we'll probably talk a lot more about this in the panel, but can read through some of the things that we recommend to do. And with that, I will close out by saying that we're really excited about this report and hope that it is helpful to you in your work. As you go through this data, if you have any questions about any piece of it, why we chose to go with a data point over another, please feel free to reach out to me at kcash@kyuf.org. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Shannon Moody.
Thanks, Corinna. Really grateful for you to walk through all of the elements of the data dashboard. I thought you did a phenomenal job covering all of it in a brief way. I know that there are folks here that will take advantage of digging into that a little bit later, but I'm really excited to talk about it with folks who are invested and interested in making sure that youth in the foster care system are able to access quality education and have the supports that they need throughout their educational experience, whatever that may bring. So today we are going to be joined by Kwanita Allen. She's a lived expert and TrueUp Peer Network member, Representative Samara Heavrin, representing District 18, DCBS Commissioner Lesa Dennis, and Dr. Sarah Rodriguez from the Kentucky Department of Education Division of School and Program Improvement. And first, I'd like to start by just having them briefly introduce themselves, and we are going to jump into that discussion. So I'll kick it over to Kwanita to get us kicked off with the introductions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kwanita Allen. I'm contracted through the Kentucky Youth Advocates, and I'm a former peer network member with lived experience.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Rodriguez. I am with the Kentucky Department of Education, where I'm a division director.
Hi. Hi, I had a frog in my throat. I am State Representative Samara Heavrin. I represent the 18th District, as Shannon said. So that's all of Grayson County and a portion of Hardin County, which is the community I grew up in. And I also chair the Families and Children Committee in the Kentucky State House.
Good morning, everyone, and I am Lesa Dennis. I am the Commissioner for the Department for Community-Based Services. So it's great to be here with you all today.
We are so grateful to have such a fantastic panel. Every single one of the individuals on the panel I know is committed to the health, safety, and well-being and success of our young people in the foster care system. And I'm really excited to have you all learn from them. So we are going to start first with just a consideration of your roles and expertise. I'd like for the panelists to share how your focus and your work in life aligns with what we're featuring today when it comes to this new data resource. What are your big reflections or takeaways from what you saw? And Kwanita, I'd love for you to kick us off with this. You might be muted. Why don't we start with Commissioner Dennis and we'll head back to Kwanita.
Well, again, good morning, everyone. This work, it is so very important to me. I have spent my whole career with DCBS. Began as a frontline investigative social worker, and never thought that I would be here as commissioner today. But that's where my journey has led me. So again, this has been my passion, my commitment for my entire professional career. But also, the health and well-being of our children is, that's important to all of us. And I know that, I know we are all very invested in seeing our children grow up in safe, stable communities and healthy communities. So, and that's especially true when we talk about children that are experiencing involvement with the child welfare system. We know what those outcomes look like for kids that are aging out of child welfare, out of the foster care system. So this is very important to me, ensuring that we are wrapping around all the supports possible to this population of youth and giving them opportunity for success just as if just as any other child in Kentucky. You know, I don't, all of us, a lot of us have children. I have adult children, and you know, they still call me every day. They have those connections and those people in their life who they know they can count on, and our children in foster care deserve that as well. So setting them up for success is you know, of the utmost importance.
Juanita, are you ready to jump in? Great. Go for it.
Okay, yeah. Yes, as a lived expert who is a high school graduate and now in college, these are what feels like my people. So it matters a lot to me. How can you take the next step when the first step was faulty? So I'm all invested.
Mm, yeah. Tara, where are you on this? What are your big reflections or takeaways, or how does the work align with your focus?
Okay, so in our division, we work with several federal education programs, with Title 1A under the Every Student Succeeds Act being the largest, and the foster care requirements fall for education fall under Title 1A. So, as part of our work, we work with our schools and districts to provide technical assistance and guidance on those requirements. And then we also monitor to make sure they're meeting the requirements. And we also meet with the education liaison at DCBS and staff regularly, and we have a data sharing agreement with them. And as far as the dashboard, I mean, I'm familiar. We use data a lot here, and so we look at that kind of data. But I like how it's been pulled out for this specific group and really delved into in a very intensive way. I love the narratives throughout the dashboard that really help you connect those dots in the various data points. And one of my favorite things are the links to the outside research. I looked at a couple of those articles and thought that was just a great thing to add to that. So the data is you know, something we should all be looking at. It shows us where those successes are, but also where improvement and work is still needed. So I think it's a great new resource.
Thanks, Dr. Rodriguez. And Representative Heavrin, I know as Chair of Families and Children's Committee in the House, you see a lot of data. What were your big takeaways here, or how does this align with what you all are focused on within the legislature?
Thank you, Shannon. What an honor to be here today and on this esteemed panel with my colleagues. First, I want to start off and say Commissioner Dennis does a fantastic job. I appreciate all the work she does and the partnership she has with me as chair. But you know, Kentucky is in better hands because of Lesa Dennis, and it's a privilege to get to work with her. You know, I always say that foster care kiddos are my kiddos. I don't have kiddos of my own. I have a four-legged golden retriever. She is the light of my life, but I have a lot more room to love other people too. And so I always say I want the best for foster care kiddos. And I say kiddos, you know, for our foster care youth and children, I want what's best for them. And, you know, Shannon, you gave me the privilege to be able to hear from the True Up Committee during the session. And I'm not surprised by this data necessarily from some of the feedback I received from lived experience, but I still see that we have a lot of work to do. And I look forward to partnering with the panel to see how we can do better. And, you know, kind of pivot. Sometimes we have an opportunity to do better. And it's not that we're doing a bad job now. We just learn more information. So I look forward to working to help increase access for kiddos.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that not only is the executive branch and the legislative branch and judicial branch committed to coming around our kids who sadly have to enter the foster care system when necessary, but they are also looking at and tracking the outcomes of kids. And while that data gives us some really good perspective and insight, it also reminds us that there's a lot of opportunity to keep tweaking and improving. So we know that youth in foster care have some unique experiences when it comes to continuing their education in K-12. which sometimes means for them frequent moves from school to school, or attending school in a residential care facility, or just overcoming the trauma that they have experienced. So, Representative Heavrin, I'll start with you, but what do you think our decision makers in all three branches of government should be focused on when it comes to creating stability and education for youth in care?
I think something that we really try to focus on already is what's best for kids. It's not what's best for adults. It's what's best for kids and what they're going through. Whenever, and I know we're talking about the college portion, but I was really tore up to hear about the lack of consistency in ASIC schools from the True Up group. And that is, I think we had that conversation in October, and I still think about it every day. And so I think we've got a lot of work to do on that, making sure that we can create a level playing field for kids in K through 12, and to make sure they're able to succeed once they get to college and they're college and career ready. If they don't have the opportunity to be on a level playing field, they're already failing before they even get the chance to thrive. And so my biggest thing is we're going to continue to do what's best for kids. And I know I've got that partnership with Commissioner Dennis, and I'm grateful for that. But I think that's a really important conversation we continue to have in Frankfurt among my colleagues too, is let's listen to kids and their experiences, and then let's make policy from that.
I muted myself. Commissioner Dennis, what do you think about that? What are your reflections there?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Representative Heavrin, for those comments, and you are a great partner as well. And I appreciate your leadership in the House, because again, working together, we've been able to do a lot of really good things, and we're going to continue that great work. I know. So again, thank you. And I agree with everything that Representative Heavrin said. We need to set these children up for success. They are already have experienced loss, trauma, and need additional support. So educational stability has to remain a priority, because consistency in school and supportive adult relationships are critical protective factors for children in foster care. So how do we reduce placement disruptions when possible, so children can remain connected to their schools, their peers, their teachers, and those activities that they are involved in? How do we strengthen coordination between the Child Welfare Agency and the local school districts to ensure that it's easier to share records, make sure transportation services are available so that children can quickly and seamlessly enroll in school? How do we expand access to trauma-informed supports and behavioral health services within schools? And then supporting our foster parents and our relative caregivers. We need to make sure that they are equipped with what they need to be able to support the educational needs of children, and helping them with post-secondary education planning. So we have to continue to invest in our transition age youth services. That helps our youth that are aging out prepare, not only academically, but help create those life skills and expose them to career opportunities and things like financial literacy and connections and support. So ultimately, I think stability is not just about where the child lives, but how we create that community, that relationship, and those supports.
Dr. Rodriguez, what's your take?
Well, I think that Commissioner Dennis really highlighted a lot of the various factors that are involved in the foster care system, and it just points to how incredibly complex the whole thing is. And so I think decision makers really need to understand all of those connections and those overlapping factors, and the roles of all the people who are involved, all the stakeholders in that system, because a change in one area can really make a consequence further on down the line. And so I think it's hard to anticipate all the consequences, but I think that's why it's really important to have accurate data to work with, and to also get feedback from a very large variety of stakeholders, including the students.
Yeah. Kwanita, as a former K-12 student and current college student, what's your take on educational stability and the importance?
Yes, I agree a lot to the relationship factor. With having been a K through 12 foster alum, our relationships are one of the first things that are skewed in our journey. And so moving forward, we really value those teachers, counselors, etc. And yeah, I just cannot agree more to the relationship aspect that comes with school.
Yeah. Will highlight something that Tara said because I think we often forget that these big systems that serve many, many kids, not just kids in foster care, but kids across the Commonwealth with the education system and the Department for Community-Based Services, there are a lot of complex systems that have to interact and speak to each other. And sometimes that communication can be difficult because of just the complexity of the situations. And we need to persist, but that clear communication and that relationship building across systems within our systems, and especially the relationships between our young people and those who serve them directly are critical. So I'm glad for Juanita and Tara and others for bringing that up. Based on what we saw when it comes to utilizing tuition waivers, I think Corinna had identified it looks like we're moving in the right direction, especially for our community and technical college systems. Why do y'all think that is? Commissioner Dennis, what do you think has changed that has created that improvement or increase?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. I believe we are seeing increased utilization because community and technical colleges are often provide a more accessible and flexible pathway for our young adults transitioning from foster care. And I had to give a shout out to the DCBS team, our transitional aged services branch. I see some of them on here. They have done a phenomenal job in working with our young people, helping them, connect them with resources, making them, helping them be aware of what their choices are. Many youth that are aging out of care, they're balancing so many different things, right? They're trying to balance, moving into those independent skills like finding employment, housing responsibilities, transportation, and while also dealing with some of their ongoing behavioral health needs. And then then they're also pursuing their, education on top of all of that. So I think our community and technical colleges offer fewer barriers, more flexible schedules. There's more of a balance between, workforce focused programming, they're smaller learning environments, and a faster pathways to employment. So and financial independence. So I think I think we are all doing a better job collectively of informing youth about available supports, and we're encouraging post-secondary education planning earlier. I know we began meeting with our young people, very early on, began having those conversations about, what do you, what are your interests? Where do you see yourself? And having those conversations early. Not always do our young people, they may not realize that these opportunities even exist for them. So how do we let them know that they are, and what those opportunities and choices are that are available to them? So the increase, I think this increase also reflects a broader recognition that foster care does not look the same for every young person, and career and technical education, apprenticeships, certifications, etc. They can be incredible, valuable, and pathways to stability and self-sufficiency. So we talk about that with our young people, and we do it earlier, and then connecting them with others who have been successful. That peer support piece also, I think, is something we've done more of that, to try to, again, to help help our young adults identify what that pathway looks like for them.
Those early conversations make a lot of sense in order to help identify potential passions, interests, and then readiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Rodriguez, what do you see in the connection between K-12 and KCTCS and potential reasons for the increase there?
Well, I think that post-secondary tuition is a challenge for a lot of students. And so being able to remove that barrier for the students in foster care has, I'm sure, contributed. But in addition to making that possible, I think there's other things that have to have happened as well. And that is that someone has made the student aware of it, but also someone has had a conversation because a student may know that the opportunity is there, but may not think that that's something for them, that that's something they could even do. Someone hopefully is encouraging them and making them see that, yes, you have the potential to succeed in this. You've got it, and really encourage them to take advantage of those opportunities. And I think that goes back to the relationships that were discussed earlier and how important those are for each individual student to get them to, be thinking about their future and what is it they want and to understand that they do have what it takes to succeed.
Juanita, what about you? What do you think?
Yes, I think to even tackle going to college is already a big step. To know like what
Yes.
your home life was like and to take this on in general already takes a lot. And I think you can maybe think, oh, let me go the route that's the least amount of time, and that's oftentimes community college. Also, trades are like kind of the same amount of time, and they're not talked about as much, but we still need them, and people have interest there. So I think that's why they go.
Juanita, what path did you decide to pursue?
Oh, I am in administration. I'm in college right now at Sullivan for human resource management.
Very cool. Yes. Rep Heverin, do you have any take on this?
I will not be able to say it as eloquently as my counterparts have said, but to sum it up in layman's terms, I think that we're meeting people where they're at, and that's the best thing we can do. Because as Commissioner Dennis said, not everyone is the same in foster care, and if we can have different avenues to meet people where they're at, it becomes more consistent with better outcomes.
I love that. Very succinct and concise, and you're absolutely right. So, while we want all kids to be college or career ready when they complete high school, it's especially important for kids who don't have a strong safety net to fall back on, like those in foster care. Um, what is I would like to just expand it to like if you had a magic wand, even if feasibility wasn't part of the conversation, what is one policy, investment, or programming change that you would like to see made in Kentucky that leads to college or career readiness for our kids in the foster care system? And Rep. Heverin, I'd love for you to kick us off with this question.
Okay. I think about this a lot, and I'm going to share something. I was looking through, as I was prepping for this, I was looking through my files of legislation that I filed in the past and things that we could do. And I think one thing we really lack in Kentucky is what can we do better for kids K through 12 in foster care and with schools. And I actually had a parent from Grayson County reach out to me probably 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and say, is there a toolkit that we can create to help with students that are in foster care? What can we do to better educate teachers? And so it's called the Foster Care Student Toolkit. And basically it says that KDE would make available a student toolkit that would include information, resources, and tools to assist school personnel with recognizing and meeting the unique educational needs of foster children and furtherance of educational rights. And each school district would have somebody that would be their liaison for foster care. And I think that's really important because if you have someone specific to go to that teachers could say, hey, I've got a question, what can we do? I think that's really important. And so, kind of sharing educational barriers, supportive classroom tech practices, disciplines, and special considerations, um, and talking about supportive classroom practices. And so that's something I want someone from Families and Children to the committee to file next year. Because I think that's really important because something I heard from the A6 schools and from the True Up is one, being consistent and also finding that level playing field. And if we don't have that level playing field in the very beginning, it's going to be really hard to get to before you go to college. And so I think that's something I really want to focus on. If I had a magic wand, I would take all the foster care kids. And, everyone would have a home that's loving and could have a wraparound. And I think that's what Commissioner Dennis I think that's one of the most important. She talked about the wraparound services. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. And, especially as an adult, I remember, coming back home after I lived in DC and, you know, finding community is the biggest gift that we can have as humans. And I want to give every foster care kiddo community because that's what makes us thrive as humans. And so that's just kind of my heart on it. But if I had a magic wand, I would do all those things.
Well, we will start we'll start working on finding that magic wand for you because that all sounds incredible. Dr. Rodriguez, what about you? What would you recommend that we focus on, whether we have a magic wand or not?
Well, I would just start by, recognizing that a lot of awesome policies have already been put in place. There are requirements that already are geared to minimize educational disruptions as much as possible. For example, the trying to keep students in their school of origin if their placement changes and their school attendance area changes, but they have good relationships and are successful in their previous school, in their school of origin, keeping them there and arranging that transportation so that they can continue to attend that same school. Those kinds of policies are critical and so incredibly important to maintain educational stability. But what I would wonder and recommend is that in addition to all these great things that are going on, it's still a very complex system. And I would, you know, I would say that the area where still work is needed is just on coordination and communication to make sure that all the great things that are in place are going to really be effective and not let anybody fall through the cracks, but is really going to move students forward.
I think that's great insight to know that there are things that we could do tomorrow or today to start on to really make sure that what's in place already is being utilized to its fullest extent. So I think that's a fantastic note for folks to be aware of, especially if they work in the school systems or within the foster care space. Commissioner Dennis, you have obviously a privilege and also a lot of responsibility to oversee the system. So no pressure, but what would you recommend that we focus on?
Oh gosh, I want to do all the things that that's already been said here. But I do think I really love hearing Representative Heavrin what you're working on for our next legislative session. Cannot say enough. Again, thank you for that, and look forward to working with you more closely on it. And then the things that we've talked about as far as the stability. How do we keep kids connected to community? We know every time a child moves, whether it is from home or from their school or what have you, it creates more trauma, it's more loss, it's more grief. So, when we have children in the foster care system, how do we continue to strengthen our work with them around transition planning, and how do we support the youth so that when they age out of the foster care system, that they are prepared, for adulthood and provide those support and those connections and have those people, those supportive adults in their life who they can reach back out to. And we've seen some of that work already in this last legislative session with House Bill 778 and allowing youth to come back into care up to 3 times. Our young people need that. They need to be able to know that they can that those supports are out there and for them. So how do we help them? How do we build a system that provides earlier career exploration and workforce exposure how do we create strong mentorships and build those supportive adult connections? How do we increase opportunities for paid internships or apprenticeships? So, and I love Representative Heavrin, I wrote that down, the piece around liaisons or navigators. I mean, our youth that are in the foster care system need that. They need that support as far as being able to navigate post-secondary education, because as we know, these youth need support well beyond the age of 18. So I would like to do so many things, Shannon.
Yeah, I know you do, and you have done so many things, Commissioner Dennis, in your time as commissioner, and also before that, as you've been within the system. And I know the commitment of you and your team, and we're grateful to see what you can continue to do within the system and in collaboration with the folks on this panel. So, Kwanita, I would love for you to have the last opportunity to respond to this and really help to close us out with that.
No problem. One thing that really helped me in my K through 12 educational journey was specifically high school. I went to J-Town, I graduated there, and they had remediation. That's when you tutored every subject that was a little low that you may have needed help with. And that is the single reason that I got on my credits to graduate high school. So if that was implemented across all the schools, that would vastly help. I went to Ballard freshman year, they didn't have it, so I came into J-Town behind, of course, with the moving and everything. But I was so grateful that that program was implemented within that school and the teachers that took the time to do that specific thing to help me walk the stage.
Yeah. Juanita, it's a great, really practical idea to make sure that there's consistency across all schools. Thank you so much for your advocacy as a member of TrueUp and for your courage in sharing your story and your own experience. It's so helpful for people to understand what it really looks like. We need to go beyond the data. That data is important, but to hear the stories of young people who have that personal experience is really paradigm shifting for people. So I will say thank you to Representative Samara Heavrin as you continue to commit to youth across Kentucky, but certainly youth in foster care. You have done a phenomenal job as chair of the Families and Children Committee. Commissioner Dennis, I just appreciate your persistence and your commitment to this work. I know it is a big part of your heart. And Dr. Rodriguez, while we don't know each other very well, I'm so grateful to have your knowledge and the passion that you bring to this work to address the systems and really get us to where we need to be when it comes to ensuring our young people have the education they need to be successful. So with that, I'm going to pass it over back to my friend Sarah Ritchey to get us closed out.
As we wrap up today, I just want to take a moment to thank all of our speakers, panelists, and those who joined us today. All of it, hearing it reminded me of the poem from Emily Dickinson, "Hope is a thing with feathers." And all of these things, it's like they're feeding this thing with feathers that rests in the soul. So we hope that today's conversation leaves you feeling informed, inspired, and ready to take action in your own spaces. As a reminder, you can view this report at thetrueupky.org. That's been linked in the chat. Also, you can follow us on Facebook to stay in the loop and see all the latest updates and highlights. Thank you for engaging in this work and for being a part of community that's committed to doing it better for our foster youth. Have a great rest of your day.